the realm of the Demon King. The portal behind Gunnar closed with a quiet snap, sealing him inside the realm of Eredhor. This land had once been known for its beauty, forests of silver trees, rivers that gleamed like molten gold, and skies painted in eternal twilight. But now, it was a realm of shadows and decay. The beauty had been consumed by a creeping darkness that radiated from the towering castle in the distance where Ultranacious Eternus, the Demon King, ruled. Gunnar stood on the edge of the blackened forest, his keen eyes scanning the unfamiliar landscape. His boots crunched on the brittle ground, where nothing living could survive. The wind carried an eerie whisper, as if the land itself was alive, watching, waiting. Suddenly, a sound, too quiet to be natural, caught his attention. Gunnar's hand instinctively hovered near the Starbreaker rifle slung across his chest, and his other hand rested on the hilt of his silver dagger, the gem in its hilt pulsing faintly in response to the sinister magic that pervaded the air. From the shadows of the trees, a figure emerged. A tall, lithe woman, cloaked in a deep green mantle that blended with the deadened foliage. Her bow was slung across her back, and her sharp eyes immediately locked onto Gunnar. She paused, assessing him with a mixture of caution and curiosity. The dappled sunlight filtering through the sickly trees flickered across her face, highlighting her elven features. Her presence was graceful, but there was an edge to her, a dangerous precision in the way she moved. "You're not from here," she stated coldly, her voice smooth but laced with suspicion. "What business do you have in Eredhor?" Gunnar's eyes narrowed, his stance tense but steady. "I'm hunting someone." The woman took a step closer, her bow now in hand, though she made no immediate move to draw an arrow. Her sharp gaze flickered over his armor, noting the unfamiliar blend of materials and the weapons not native to her world. "A hunter, are you?" she asked, her tone unreadable. "This is no place for an ordinary hunter. Eredhor is death for those who don't belong." Gunnar's grip tightened on the hilt of his dagger, though he kept his voice steady. "I'm no ordinary hunter. I'm looking for Ultranacious Eternus." The moment the Demon King's name left his lips, something shifted in the woman's demeanor. Her eyes darkened, and her grip on her bow tightened ever so slightly. But her expression remained calm, carefully masking whatever emotions she harbored. "You're a fool, then?" she replied, her tone sharper. "No one seeks out the Demon King and lives to tell the tale." "Then it's good I don't plan on leaving here without ending him," Gunnar shot back, his voice hard with determination. The woman studied him for a long moment, her eyes narrowing. "Who are you?" "Gunnar," he answered bluntly. "Who are you?" She didn't answer immediately, instead watching him with a calculating gaze, as if deciding whether to trust him. "I am Lissandra," she said finally, her voice softer but no less dangerous. "A ranger of Eredhor, sworn to protect what little remains of this dying realm." Gunnar raised an eyebrow. "A protector? In a place like this?" "There is still some light left here," Lissandra replied, her tone firm, "though it's fading. Ultranacious is the reason for this decay. His corruption spreads, turning everything it touches to ash. If you're truly here to end him, then you should know. You won't get far alone." Gunnar didn't lower his guard. "I don't need help. I've hunted monsters like him before." Lissandra smirked, though her eyes remained serious. "Have you now?" "Ultranacious isn't like the creatures you've faced before, Hunter. He is not a man, and he's more than a demon. He is the heart of this realm, and everything here obeys him." Gunnar's jaw tightened. "I know what he is. That's why I'm here." Lissandra's eyes flicked to the silver dagger at his side. The gem embedded in it pulsed again, responding to the dark energy of Eredhor. She seemed to recognize its power but said nothing. Instead, she took another step closer, her voice lowering. "If you truly wish to face Ultranacious, you will need more than just weapons. The path to his fortress is guarded by things far worse than you can imagine. Gunnar scrutinized her with narrowed eyes. There was something about Lissandra that didn't sit right with him. Her confidence in this land, her familiarity with the Demon King, it was too much for someone merely protecting what was left of Eredhor. "I've met a lot of demons," Gunnar said slowly, his voice cold, "and I've killed them all. But there's something different about you." Lissandra's face remained impassive, though a flicker of something crossed her eyes. "Is there?" Gunnar's gaze sharpened. The dagger at his side pulsed again, reacting strongly in Lissandra's presence. His instincts, honed through years of battle and betrayal, screamed at him. "You're hiding something," he said darkly, stepping closer, his hand tightening on the hilt of his dagger. "What's your connection to him?" Lissandra's eyes flashed with something colder, harder, but she didn't flinch. "My connection," she repeated, her voice dangerously calm. Gunnar's mind raced, piecing together the clues. The power that radiated from her wasn't just any magic. It was similar to the dark energy that radiated from Eredhor itself. He'd felt it before, emanating from the Demon King's presence, and her familiarity with Ultranacious, her calm demeanor when talking about him. It all clicked into place. He stepped forward, his voice low and full of accusation. "You're his daughter, aren't you?" For a moment, Lissandra's mask faltered, her eyes hardened, and the truth hung between them like a blade. "Yes," she admitted, her voice like ice. "I am the third princess of Ultranacious Eternus." Gunnar's heart pounded in his chest, rage bubbling to the surface. Memories of his fallen comrades, slain by the Demon King's forces, flashed before his eyes. His grip tightened on his rifle, his finger twitching toward the trigger. "You're the daughter of that murdering bastard," he snarled, his voice shaking with fury. Lissandra's eyes flashed with anger, but she didn't back down. "I am. And if you plan on killing him, then you'll have to face me first." The air between them crackled with tension, their mutual hatred for Ultranacious simmering beneath the surface. Gunnar's mind whirled, torn between his instincts to strike and the cold logic that told him he needed her knowledge to survive this realm. He glared at her, his voice low and dangerous. "Why should I trust you?" Lissandra held his gaze, her voice unwavering. "Because I want him dead as much as you do. My father is a monster, but even monsters have enemies within. If you kill him, I'll be free from his shadow, but you won't get to him alone." For a long moment, they stood in silence, the weight of their unspoken alliance hanging between them. Gunnar's heart still pounded with fury, but he knew she was right. The realm of Eredhor was more dangerous than anything he'd ever faced before, and Lissandra knew its secrets. Finally, Gunnar lowered his weapon, though his distrust lingered in the air like poison. "Fine," he said through gritted teeth, "but if you betray me, I'll end you myself." Lissandra's smirk returned, though it was cold. "I'd expect nothing less, Hunter." Without another word, she turned and began to move deeper into the dying forest, her pace swift and purposeful. Gunnar followed, the weight of his mission pressing heavily on his shoulders. He could feel the darkness closing in, the sense that they were being watched by unseen eyes. The fortress of Morgul, the seat of Ultranacious's power, loomed in the distance like a blackened heart, casting its shadow over the decaying realm. As they drew closer, the land itself seemed to warp and twist around them, a reflection of the Demon King's corruption. Gunnar's hand hovered near his dagger, the gem pulsing as if in warning. The real battle was only beginning, and the daughter of his greatest enemy now walked at his side. Lissandra Diabolosa frowned, her thoughts drifting back to the time she spent within the darkened halls of her father's castle. The memories were heavy with dread, twisting shadows, unseen dangers, and corridors filled with malice. "The castle is a labyrinth," she began, her voice tinged with bitterness as she turned her gaze toward Gunnar. "Twisting corridors, hidden chambers, traps and guards at every turn. Be prepared for anything." Gunnar's cold eyes remained fixed on her, his tone as precise as the weapon he carried. Who serves your father? Lissandra's expression darkened as she recalled the horrors that lurked within the walls of the castle. Mostly demons and monsters, she replied quietly. But there are loyal servants among them as well. We should tread carefully. So, all within the walls are targets? Gunnar asked, his words clipped and unfeeling. Lissandra's nod was solemn, her resolve hardening. Indeed. Our priority is to locate Ultranacious Eternus and eliminate him. The rest can be dealt with later. Gunnar studied her, silently assessing her resolve before continuing. Where are your sisters? At the mention of her sisters, Lissandra glanced over her shoulder, memories flickering behind her eyes, nostalgia mixed with dread. My older sister, Lilith Nocturna, rules over the night creatures. My younger sister, Veronica Diabolos, tends to the daytime beasts. Both serve our father loyally, but they won't interfere with our mission. Gunnar's voice remained cold, cutting through the night. Are they disposable? The question hung in the air and Lissandra hesitated. Her heart weighed heavy with the answer she knew she had to give. They are not disposable, she said slowly, each word deliberate. But they won't stand in our way. They understand the gravity of the situation. There was a pause, the tension thick between them. How far to the castle? Gunnar asked, shifting the conversation back to their goal. We're about halfway there, Lissandra replied, eyes scanning the darkening horizon. Prepare yourself. The journey will only get more treacherous from here. We'll stop for the night, Gunnar said decisively. Do you have a place close by? Lissandra led him through the dense forest until they reached a small clearing. A natural hot spring bubbled up from the earth, the steam casting an eerie glow in the moonlight. This will do for the night, she said softly, her voice losing some of its usual edge. Rest here. Tomorrow we continue. Gunnar moved around the perimeter, setting up small sensors with the efficiency of a man who had done this countless times. Lissandra watched with curiosity, noting the precision in his movements. What are those for? She asked, intrigued. They'll alert us if something approaches, Gunnar explained matter-of-factly. Lissandra nodded, impressed by his foresight. Very clever. I'll keep watch as well. Get some rest. Gunnar handed her a small tablet. If a sensor trips, it will show you where and what it is. Lissandra took the tablet, examining it carefully before slipping it into her pocket. Thank you, Gunnar. I'll be ready. Gunnar laid down next to the small fire, adjusting his cloak around him. As Lissandra settled nearby, she kept one eye on him, studying his rigid posture. There was something more to this man, something driven by a deeper pain than most warriors carried. She wondered what kind of demons haunted his past, besides her father. Good night, Gunnar, she murmured softly. May your dreams be filled with victory. But as the night deepened, Lissandra noticed something strange. Gunnar twitched in his sleep, his body tense and restless. He muttered something. A name, perhaps, but it was too garbled to make out. Concerned, Lissandra leaned closer, trying to hear his words more clearly. Gunnar, she whispered, gently reaching out to shake him. In an instant, Gunnar sat up, grabbing her hair and pressing the cold silver dagger to her throat. His breathing was harsh and his eyes, wild and unfocused, locked onto hers with a dangerous intensity. What are you doing? Lissandra stammered, forcing herself to remain calm despite the blade at her neck. Her heart raced as the cold metal bit into her skin. Gunnar blinked, his eyes slowly focusing as he came to his senses. He released her hair and lowered the dagger, guilt flooding his features. I'm sorry. Did I hurt you? Lissandra swallowed hard, the fear still lingering, though she tried to brush it off. No, you didn't hurt me. I'm fine. Her fingers brushed over the spot where the dagger had been. What was that for? Gunnar looked away, shame clouding his expression. A nightmare, he muttered. I didn't mean... It's all right, Lissandra cut him off, her voice gentle now. We all have nightmares. Just be careful with that dagger, okay? Before either of them could say more, the tablet in Lissandra's pocket lit up with a warning. 3 sensors had been tripped. Quickly she grabbed it, scanning the readings. "Gunnar, we need to move," she said urgently. "There are intruders nearby." Gunnar was already on his feet, his rifle in hand. He pressed a button on the side, and the weapon hummed to life, glowing with an ominous blue light. The fire in Gunnar's eyes now glowed with that same blue energy, dangerous and intense. "That's quite impressive," Lissandra remarked, noting the power behind the weapon. "Lead the way, Gunnar. Let's see who's out there." "I call her the Starbreaker," Gunnar replied, a rare hint of affection in his voice. "She has quite the attitude." Lissandra followed him through the forest, her senses on high alert. She moved with silent grace, keeping a safe distance behind Gunnar, mindful of the earlier incident. "You're intense," she observed quietly as they slipped through the trees. "Only when I'm hunting demons," Gunnar responded coldly, his focus unwavering. Lissandra smiled faintly. "I like that. Maybe after we defeat my father, you could teach me some of your methods." Before she could say more, a creature burst from the brush. A hulking beast with 4 legs and 2 massive arms, snarling as it charged toward them. Without hesitation, Gunnar raised his rifle and fired a single round. The shot hit the creature's right arm, severing it cleanly and sending it stumbling at Lissandra's feet. Lissandra crouched down, inspecting the creature's fallen form, its leathery skin and brutish appearance unmistakable. A minotaur. Gunnar approached, his expression cold as he drew his dagger and thrust it into the base of the creature's skull. The gem on the dagger flared bright blue, and the minotaur let out a final, anguished scream before its body dissolved into ash and brimstone. Lissandra watched in awe. "That was incredible. Your power. I've never seen anything like it before." Her eyes lingered on the glowing gem in the dagger's hilt. "What is that?" "It's the starlight gem," Gunnar replied, simply wiping the blade clean. "The starlight gem," Lissandra murmured, her voice filled with wonder. "So that's how you're able to fight my father's forces so effectively. It traps their essence, doesn't it?" Gunnar nodded, his face set in grim determination. "Without it, they would just return. This gem makes sure they don't." Lissandra stood, her respect for Gunnar deepening. "You're even more powerful than I thought." Gunnar's voice was hard as he sheathed his dagger. "When you hate something enough, you learn how to fight it." Lissandra felt the weight of his words, her own hatred for her father bubbling beneath the surface. "You're right. Knowledge is power." They continued forward, both knowing that the real challenge lay ahead. The fortress of Morgul, the heart of Ultranacious Kingdom, loomed in the distance, its presence a dark stain on the landscape. "Let's keep moving," Lissandra said quietly. "They know we're here now." "Lead the way, Princess," Gunnar responded, his voice filled with unrelenting resolve. Together they pressed on, their uneasy alliance holding, for now. Lissandra Diabolosa led the way, her posture tense as she navigated the treacherous landscape toward her father's lair. The journey through the Demon King's realm, now a land of death and decay, weighed heavily on both her and Gunnar. Once a vibrant, living world, it was now shrouded in darkness and despair, the skies forever painted in shades of crimson. The scent of sulphur and rot filled the air, and the ground beneath their feet felt soaked with the blood of countless victims. As they neared the entrance to Ultranacious Eternus's fortress, an oppressive energy pressed down on them, as though the land itself resisted their presence. The castle loomed ahead, an intimidating, jagged structure of black stone. It seemed to pulse with malevolence, a living, breathing entity built to trap and crush any who dared approach. Gunnar tightened his grip on the Starbreaker rifle, every muscle in his body alert. He could feel the malevolent gaze of the castle upon him, as if the very walls were alive with the memory of all who had perished within. He could sense this was the final battle, the culmination of everything he'd fought for, and the weight of it hung heavily on him. Lissandra too felt the pull of the place, an inescapable reminder of her lineage. She paused before the gates, her heart racing. "Be prepared, Gunnar," she warned, her voice steady but carrying an undertone of dread. "This place twists your mind, if you let it." Gunnar's eyes remained cold and focused, but he could feel the weight of the place pressing on his soul. He checked the charge on his rifle, his breath even as he spoke. "I'm always ready." Lissandra's hand found the hilt of her sword, her movements quick and practiced. "We have to move fast," she whispered, her eyes darting around the area. "We don't want to be caught in the open when the sun rises." As they neared the outer walls, they pressed themselves against the cool moss-covered stone, waiting for any sign of patrols. The quiet was deafening. Lissandra caught sight of movement, a twisted creature, part spider, part human, lumbering across the courtyard in front of the gate. Its 8 legs clicked against the ground as its grotesque, man-like torso turned, searching. Lissandra signalled for Gunnar to hold back. Drawing her sword, she stepped forward, her voice a sharp command. "Show yourself, foul creature," the spider hissed, charging toward her with terrifying speed, its legs scraping the ground with a sickening sound. Lissandra's sword met the creature's strike, her blade sparking as it clashed with the creature's exoskeleton. Gunnar, watching from the shadows, took a deep breath. "So much for stealth," he muttered under his breath, raising the Starbreaker to scan the surroundings for other threats. The spider lunged again, its poisonous fangs snapping dangerously close to Lissandra's throat. She spun, kicking the creature in its abdomen to drive it back. Despite her skill, she could see no easy opening. "Would you like a hand?" Gunnar's voice cut through the noise. "Yes, please," she grunted, ducking beneath another attack. In one swift motion, Gunnar fired a single round from the Starbreaker. The blue energy bolt tore through the spider's torso, severing its upper body from its legs. The creature screeched, its body collapsing in a pool of acrid acid that hissed and bubbled on the stone. Lissandra wiped the sweat from her brow, breathing heavily. "Thank you." Gunnar, his expression stoic, nodded curtly. "No problem." She rolled her eyes despite herself, but couldn't suppress a small smile. "I forgot how much easier it is to fight with someone else. Let's hope that's the last of them." But Gunnar's senses were far from at ease. His years of combat experience made him attuned to danger, and now every instinct screamed at him that they were not alone. He raised his rifle, the scope glinting as he scanned the upper levels of the fortress. "I don't like this," Gunnar muttered, his voice low but urgent. Lissandra turned to him, her heart picking up speed. "What do you see?" "Nothing yet," Gunnar replied, his tone grim. "But I can feel it. There's something watching us." The air around them grew colder, more oppressive, as if something in the shadows of the fortress stirred. Lissandra's eyes narrowed, her grip on her sword tightening. "All right. We need to stay sharp." Gunnar reached into his pouch and produced a small sphere, throwing it into the air. The ball hovered, its sensors scanning the perimeter with a faint hum. "What is that?" Lissandra whispered, her brow furrowed as she eyed the floating orb. "Sensor drone," Gunnar replied flatly. "It'll alert us to any incoming threats." Lissandra gave him a sidelong glance, impressed. "You truly are full of surprises." Gunnar said nothing, his eyes focused on the castle door looming before them. "What's on the other side of that door?" Lissandra swallowed hard. "The labyrinth," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's where my father waits." The darkened halls of the fortress were a maze of horrors. The walls were alive with the remnants of tortured souls, their bones twisted into grotesque shapes and woven into the very architecture. The air was thick with the sounds of distant screams, echoes of those who had fallen to Ultranacious's cruelty. "Keep your focus," Gunnar muttered, as they moved deeper into the castle. Every shadow seemed to shift and writhe, alive with malice. At last, they entered the heart of the fortress, a massive open chamber with rivers of molten lava flowing beneath the floor. The heat radiated upward, casting an eerie glow across the vast stone hall. At the center, surrounded by his demonic henchmen, sat Ultranacious Eternus on his throne. The Demon King's eyes gleamed with cruel amusement as he surveyed Gunnar and Lissandra, the air crackling with tension. "So," Ultranacious boomed, his voice echoing throughout the chamber, "my daughter brings me a hunter. How amusing." Gunnar's grip on his weapon tightened, his anger bubbling beneath the surface. He had finally reached the heart of darkness. The time for battle had come. Lissandra stood by his side, her heart pounding as she prepared for the fight of her life. "Prepare yourself, Gunnar," she whispered, her voice edged with determination. "This is it." Together they faced the Demon King, knowing that the fight ahead would be their greatest challenge yet.